To live in the fulfilled desire is to step beyond mere wishing and into the reality of what is already yours. The mistake many make is believing that their external circumstances dictate their inner state, when in truth, it is the inner state that shapes the external world. Look around you. Everything you see was once invisible, existing only in the unseen realm of imagination. It was called forth, not by waiting, not by hoping, but by a conscious assumption that made it real before the eyes could see it. There is a simple truth that few understand. The only requirement for receiving is to assume the state of having. There is no need to struggle, no need to force, no need to search outside of oneself. The answer lies within, in the state of being you occupy. If you desire to be wealthy, healthy, loved, or successful, you must first embody that state internally, not as a wish, but as a fact. You must abandon the mindset of wanting and replace it with the certainty of already possessing. The reason so many remain trapped in longing is that they fail to step into the consciousness of already having. They continue to see themselves as the one who desires, rather than the one who has received. The mind that constantly affirms, I want, reinforces the state of not having, but the mind that declares I am shapes the world according to its claim. Observe the world around you, and you will see this principle at work. The confident man is given more reasons to be confident. The one who walks in success attracts opportunities that confirm his success. The individual who dwells in lack finds the world reflecting scarcity at every turn. It is not the world that determines their state. It is their state that determines the world. If you wish to transform your life, you must begin by transforming your inner conversations. Instead of entertaining thoughts of waiting, of striving, of hoping, step boldly into the assumption that your desire is already a living reality. Feel the relief of it being done. How would you act if you knew beyond doubt that what you sought was already accomplished? Would you not walk with a sense of peace, a quiet confidence that nothing can shake? Many believe they must see proof before they can believe. They wait for conditions to change, for external signs to convince them that their desire is within reach. But they do not realize that it is the belief itself that creates the proof. The moment you assume the wish fulfilled, the world begins to shift in accordance with that assumption. The bridge of incidents that leads to the realization of your desire is constructed the moment you step into the feeling of its fulfillment. This is not imagination in the sense of idle fantasy. This is the highest law of creation. Every great accomplishment, every masterpiece, every discovery first existed in the unseen before it took form in the physical world. The greatest minds, the most successful individuals, did not wait for reality to grant them permission to believe. They believed first, and reality conformed. Consider the man who desires wealth but continues to see himself as poor. He wakes each day feeling the weight of his financial burdens, affirming in thought and feeling that he lacks. Every action he takes is done from this place of lack, and the world obliges by reflecting that state back to him. Now consider the man who, though his pockets may be empty today, assumes within himself that he is already abundant. He does not wait for evidence, he lives as though it is already done. He moves through life with an air of ease, speaks with confidence, gives freely, and sees wealth not as something distant, but as something already his. And so life bends to meet this assumption, presenting opportunities, connections, and circumstances that align with his internal state. The same principle applies to health, relationships, success, every aspect of life. To the one who feels whole, health is restored. To the one who feels love, love must appear. To the one who feels accomplished, doors of opportunity open effortlessly. There is no exception to this law. Yet the key is persistence. Many will try to assume a new state, but when they do not see instant change, they retreat into their old way of thinking. They allow appearances to dictate their belief rather than standing firm in their assumption. But creation does not happen in an instant. It unfolds in perfect order in its own time. The wise do not concern themselves with how long it will take. They rest in the certainty that it is already done, and they remain faithful to that conviction until the unseen becomes seen. The question is not whether this law works. The question is whether you will dare to believe in it. Will you persist in the assumption of your fulfilled desire even when the world seems to show no sign of change? Will you hold the feeling of already having even when the senses tempt you to doubt? The man who does this is the master of his fate, the architect of his destiny. He does not waver, he does not beg, he does not chase. He simply assumes and allows the unseen forces of life to shape themselves around his conviction. If you wish to change your world, you must first change your state of being. And the greatest secret is this: you do not need permission from the world to do so. At any moment, you can step into the consciousness of already having, already being, already possessing. The moment you do, life will conspire to confirm your assumption. You need not seek, only assume, and it shall be. The greatest secret known to those who shape their destiny is simple. Assumption creates reality. The world you experience is not formed by chance, nor by external circumstances beyond your control. It is shaped entirely by what you assume to be true. Every event, every encounter, every condition in life is nothing more than the outpicturing of an inner state. What you hold as fact within, life must reflect without. There is no power outside of you that determines your fate. The only force at work is the power of your assumption. If you wish to change any aspect of your life, you must begin not by attempting to alter conditions, but by changing the beliefs that gave rise to those conditions. Look carefully at the world around you, and you will see the perfect mirror of your inner conversations. If you believe yourself to be unlucky, misfortune will follow you. If you believe yourself to be successful, life will confirm that assumption with every step you take. If you assume lack, you will see it manifest in every area of your life. But if you assume abundance, then abundance must find its way to you. Most do not realize that they are assuming all the time. They believe themselves to be mere observers of life, reacting to events as they unfold. But the truth is, they are the creators of those very events. Every moment, they are assuming something about themselves and the world, and life simply responds to those assumptions. The one who constantly thinks, "I never get opportunities," is not merely describing his condition, he is creating it. The one who believes, "Things always work out for me," is not simply expressing optimism, he is setting into motion the unseen forces that will ensure his assumption becomes reality. Observe a confident man. He assumes success in all he does. He does not second guess himself, does not wonder whether he is worthy, does not fear failure. His assumption of success precedes any external evidence. And because he holds to this belief unwaveringly, life must conform to his state of mind. Doors open for him, people respond favorably, and circumstances align effortlessly. Now consider the man who assumes failure. He hesitates, he doubts, he fears rejection. His assumption colors his actions, his posture, his tone. And so the world reflects his inner state back to him with experiences of rejection, struggle, and disappointment. The law does not discriminate. It is as precise as the law of gravity. Whether one is aware of it or not, it is always at work, molding the outer world to match the inner conviction. To assume something is to accept it as true, regardless of appearances. This is where most falter. They allow the senses to dictate what they believe, rather than using belief to dictate what the senses must reveal. They look at their bank account and assume financial struggle, and so the struggle continues. They observe loneliness and assume they are unwanted, and so loneliness persists. But those who understand the creative power of assumption refuse to let appearances dictate their beliefs. They assume the reality they desire, knowing that in time the world must confirm it. It is not enough to merely say, "I believe." Belief is not in words, but in feeling. One must feel the truth of the assumption deeply, allowing it to saturate the mind and body as though it were already a fact. To assume wealth is not to wish for it, but to walk with the ease and confidence of one who already possesses it. To assume love is not to long for it, but to carry oneself as one who is already deeply cherished. The one who truly assumes does not beg, does not chase, does not wonder when things will change. He simply knows. And in that knowing, the transformation begins. Time is an illusion where assumption is concerned. The moment one fully assumes a state, reality is already shifting to reflect it. But patience is required, for the unseen always precedes the seen. Many abandon their assumption too soon, allowing doubt to creep in. They look around and see no evidence of change, and in doing so, they return to their old state, reinforcing the very condition they sought to escape. But those who persist, who remain faithful to their assumption despite what the senses tell them, will inevitably see their world change to match it. To change one's assumption is to change one's destiny. Nothing else is required. There is no need to struggle, no need to force external conditions to shift. One must only assume the state desired and live in that assumption as though it were already true. The feeling of the wish fulfilled is the secret. Hold it, embody it, and the world will be powerless to do anything but reflect it back to you. Nothing in this world has power over you except that which you assume to be true. Circumstances are not fixed, conditions are not permanent, and no situation has authority over the one who understands the law of assumption. The great mistake of mankind is to believe that external forces shape their reality when in truth, it is their internal state that governs all. Those who wait for conditions to change before they believe in their desired reality will wait endlessly. But those who assume their desire is already fulfilled will see the world move in ways they cannot fathom to confirm their belief. There is no limitation except that which is accepted. The one who assumes lack will find himself surrounded by scarcity, no matter how much effort he expends. The one who assumes success will find doors opening where none seem to exist. The law of assumption is not concerned with effort, struggle, or chance. It is concerned only with the state you occupy. If you assume that something is beyond your reach, life will ensure that it remains so. But the moment you assume it is yours, unseen forces will shift, people will act in ways they themselves do not understand, and conditions will rearrange themselves to reflect your assumption. The world is full of those who try to force change through action alone, believing that effort is the key to transformation. Yet they remain trapped, endlessly striving, yet never arriving. Their mistake is that they act from a state of lack rather than fulfillment. The one who wishes to be wealthy but assumes poverty will find that no amount of work will free him from financial struggle, for his actions are driven by the belief that he is lacking. But the one who assumes wealth, even when appearances suggest otherwise, will find that opportunities arise, ideas flow, and means appear seemingly out of nowhere. It is not the effort that creates success. It is the assumption from which the effort arises. There is no condition in life that cannot be overridden by assumption. Those who have been told they will never recover from illness yet assume health find themselves healed. Those who have been told they are unworthy of love yet assume themselves to be deeply cherished find themselves surrounded by affection. Those who have been told they are incapable yet assume their own brilliance see their abilities unfold in ways that defy logic. Every so-called obstacle is nothing more than an old assumption made visible. Change the assumption, and the obstacle must dissolve. The senses deceive. They report only the reflection of past assumptions, never the truth of what is possible. To trust what the eyes see is to remain bound by the limitations of previous beliefs. The wise do not rely on appearances to dictate what they believe. They assume what they desire to be true, and in time the senses must conform to that assumption. It may appear as though circumstances are against them, as though reality itself is unmovable. But the outer world is nothing more than a shadow cast by the inner world, and a shadow cannot help but change when the light that creates it is redirected. Many will say, "But I have no proof that my desire is coming to pass." They look for signs, for reassurance, for validation from the world before they dare to believe, and in doing so they betray their own creative power. The only proof required is the assumption itself. If one truly assumes, they do not need evidence. They are the evidence. They carry themselves as though it were already done. And because they do, life bends to make it so. The greatest transformations occur when one assumes a new state of being without hesitation. There is no need to seek confirmation, no need to question, no need to wonder how. The assumption alone is the seed from which all things grow. When a farmer plants a seed, he does not dig it up each day to see if it is growing. He knows that given time, it must break through the surface. The same is true for assumption. If one holds to their desired state unwaveringly, refusing to be swayed by appearances, they will find that what once seemed impossible becomes inevitable. Time is irrelevant where assumption is concerned. It is not a matter of waiting for conditions to align. It is a matter of aligning oneself internally with the state desired. The moment you assume something as true, it begins to take form. How quickly it manifests depends only on how faithfully you remain in that state. The impatient uproot their desires before they have time to bloom, allowing doubt to replace their assumption. But those who persist, who refuse to be moved by what their senses tell them, who remain in the conviction that their wish is already fulfilled, will see reality mold itself to their assumption with precision. The law of assumption does not care about past failures, about external circumstances, or about logical probabilities. It operates only according to the beliefs you hold. If you assume yourself to be a new person with a new life, then that new life must take shape. It does not matter where you are now, what has happened before, or what others believe to be true. The only truth that matters is the one you accept for yourself. Assume wisely, persist in that assumption, and the world will have no choice but to prove you right. The great key to transforming life lies not in effort, not in external circumstances, but in feeling. Feeling is the secret by which all things are made manifest, the invisible force that brings forth the seen from the unseen. It is not enough to simply wish for something or to declare it with words. One must feel it as true, the depths of being. The feeling of the wish fulfilled is the bridge between the imagined and the real, the unseen and the seen. Those who master this principle hold the key to shaping their reality, for what is felt as real with conviction must harden into fact. There is no power in idle thought. A man may repeat affirmations day and night, yet if they do not move him emotionally, if they do not stir within him the deep conviction that his desire is already his, they will remain mere words. It is not thought alone, but thought impregnated with feeling that creates. To feel a thing as true is to summon it into existence. For the subconscious mind, which governs all expression, does not respond to words, it responds to feeling. That which is deeply felt takes root within and begins its unseen work, rearranging events, shifting circumstances, and drawing forth that which is in harmony with the assumed state. To feel a thing as real before it has external confirmation is the great secret of those who live in fulfillment. They do not wait for the world to give them permission to believe. They believe, and the world must follow. The man who desires wealth yet walks in the feeling of lack will find that no effort can change his condition, for his dominant state of mind is one of poverty. But the man who assumes wealth, who feels himself already in possession of abundance, who walks in the certainty that his fortune is made, will see the world shape itself to match that assumption. One does not need to see evidence before feeling a thing as real. The senses must not be allowed to dictate what is accepted as true. The feeling must come first, and then the evidence will follow. Most live in the reverse, allowing external appearances to determine their inner state. They look at their circumstances, see lack, and then feel poor. They look at their loneliness, see absence, and then feel unwanted. But to those who understand the secret, the process is inverted. They feel rich before the money appears. They feel love before the companion arrives. They feel successful before the opportunity presents itself. And because they feel it first, the world must conform. Feeling is the state of consciousness one chooses to dwell in. Every emotion, every reaction, every impression left upon the mind is shaping reality in ways unseen. If one persistently feels unworthy, life will reflect that assumption in experiences of rejection and limitation. If one persistently feels powerful, life will arrange itself to confirm that power. Feeling is not something that happens to you. It is something you assume, something you choose, something you cultivate. Every moment offers the opportunity to select a new feeling, to assume a new state, to dwell in the experience of the wish fulfilled. It does not matter whether the world tells you that what you desire is impossible. The world only reflects the assumptions that have been planted in consciousness. If you change the feeling, you change the outcome. There is no force external to you that determines your destiny. There is only the feeling that you hold within. A man who feels confident and secure in his ability will find that life opens doors for him effortlessly. A man who feels uncertain, hesitant, doubtful will find obstacles at every turn. It is not the actions themselves that determine success or failure, but the feeling from which those actions arise. To assume a new feeling is to assume a new reality. Those who wish to change their circumstances must first change their inner emotional state. The feeling must be taken on as a garment, worn as though it were already a fact. One must dwell in the feeling of being loved to attract love, in the feeling of abundance to attract wealth, in the feeling of health to experience vitality. There is no power in waiting for circumstances to change before allowing oneself to feel differently. The change must be made within. And when it is done with conviction, the outer world cannot help but reflect it. Many struggle with the idea of feeling something that has no physical evidence. They say, how can I feel rich when my bank account is empty? How can I feel loved when I am alone? But they fail to see that they are already doing this, only in the opposite direction. They feel poor, and so they remain poor. They feel unwanted, and so they continue to experience loneliness. They are already creating their reality through feeling, but they are doing so unconsciously, allowing appearances to dictate what they feel rather than deliberately choosing their inner state. The great secret is to reverse this process, to feel first and allow the world to follow. Feeling does not need to be forced. It is simply a matter of allowing oneself to sink into the state desired. The mind, when relaxed, is most impressionable, most receptive to new states of consciousness. That is why the moments before sleep and upon waking are so powerful. In those moments, one can impress upon the subconscious any assumption they choose, and if done consistently, it will be accepted as fact. The feeling of the wish fulfilled, deeply felt in those drowsy moments, is the seed that will grow into external reality. To live in fulfillment is not to chase, not to strive, not to wish for change. It is to assume the feeling of already having that which is desired. Feeling is the key, the secret doorway to a new reality. Those who master this principle hold the power to shape their lives with precision, to walk in the certainty that what they assume is true will be made manifest. The world is nothing more than a mirror, and it will always reflect back the feeling that is most deeply held within. The greatest error one can make is to assume a new state momentarily and then abandon it when the senses do not immediately conform. The world does not change in an instant, not because the assumption is powerless, but because the lingering impressions of the old state must first be dissolved. To persist is to remain unwavering, to stand firm in the unseen reality until it crystallizes into form. He who persists in his assumption, no matter what the world presents before him, will mold reality according to his belief. He who wavers, who doubts, who allows appearances to dictate his state, remains bound by his past assumptions, endlessly circling in the same experiences. There is no force outside of consciousness that determines what must be. Every event, every encounter, every circumstance is the outpicturing of an assumption once held. If a man desires a new life but continues to see himself as he was before, he remains unchanged, not because he lacks power, but because he lacks persistence. He allows the present moment to dictate his belief, instead of allowing his belief to dictate the present moment. The wise understand that reality is but a reflection, and they do not flinch when the mirror still holds the image of the past. They persist, knowing that the mirror must eventually conform to the new assumption. A seed planted does not sprout the moment it touches the soil. It must be nurtured, given time to take root before it breaks through into visible form. So it is with assumption. The moment you assume a thing to be true, the unseen forces of creation set to work. Paths begin to unfold, events begin to shift, and the world subtly realigns itself to bring forth the assumed reality. But if one uproots the seed too soon, allowing doubt to take hold, the process is halted. Many plant the seed of a new assumption, only to dig it up moments later, checking for evidence, questioning whether it is working. They do not realize that their very doubt is undoing the work that had already begun. To persist is to remain unmoved by delay, unaffected by circumstances, and unshaken by appearances. It is to know with absolute certainty that what is felt as real will harden into fact. There is no room for hesitation in creation. One must assume the wish fulfilled and then live in the full conviction of its reality, regardless of what the world reflects back. This is the test of faith. Not blind faith in something outside of oneself, but faith in the power of assumption, faith in the law that governs all manifestation. Many fail because they are swayed by appearances. They assume wealth but continue to check their bank balance, waiting for confirmation. They assume health but continue to seek reassurance from the world. They assume love but allow a moment of loneliness to convince them otherwise. The senses are the great deceivers, reporting only the past, never the future that is being shaped. To persist is to ignore the evidence of the senses and remain steadfast in the inner conviction of already being what one desires to be. There is no such thing as an impossible dream, only an assumption that has not yet been fully embodied. The moment one fully assumes a thing to be true without contradiction, the world must shift. It is law. But this law does not work for the doubter, for the one who tries, tests, and then abandons the state before it has matured. It works for the one who remains firm in his conviction, who does not let fleeting emotions, passing doubts, or external conditions sway him from the state assumed. The great secret is that nothing can resist an assumption consistently held. The world may push back at first, reflecting the remnants of old beliefs. But if one does not falter, the new assumption will dominate. It is not effort that brings about change, it is persistence. The one who assumes for a day and then falls back into doubt has not truly assumed at all. The one who assumes and holds fast through all appearances, through all seeming delays, is the one who will see his world transformed. When the assumption feels natural, when it no longer feels like an effort but a simple fact of being, then it is done. This is the point at which the outer world must align. But until that moment, one must persist. The assumption must be nourished, protected, and strengthened until it becomes so dominant that nothing can shake it. Every moment offers a choice, to dwell in the new state or to revert to the old. Every wavering thought, every return to doubt delays the manifestation. But every moment spent in the conviction of already being what one desires strengthens the foundation of the new reality. Persistence is not about forcing a thing into existence. It is about remaining in the state of already having it until the world has no choice but to conform. There is no need to chase, to strive, to struggle. The only work required is the inner work of maintaining the assumption, refusing to be moved by anything that contradicts it. The world is fluid, ever-changing, ever molding to the assumptions impressed upon it. And when one persists without wavering, the assumed reality is made visible, not by chance, not by luck, but by law. To live in the end is to dwell in the feeling of already having that which is desired. It is to occupy the state of fulfillment so completely that there is no room for doubt, no need for effort, and no sense of separation between oneself and the thing longed for. The great secret of creation is that there is no future event to be attained, no distant goal to be reached. There is only the present assumption, the inner reality already established, which must by law externalize itself in the world of form. The mistake most make is to condition their assumption, to treat the desired state as something separate from themselves, something to be achieved through action rather than realized through being. They say, one day I will have it, or if I do this, then it will come, failing to see that such thoughts push the fulfillment further away. The only way to bring a desire into being is to claim it now, to take possession of it in consciousness, and to refuse to acknowledge any state that contradicts it. If a man wishes to be rich, he must not think of wealth as something he will attain. He must think from wealth, act from wealth, feel as though he already possesses the riches he seeks. The world is but a reflection of consciousness, an obedient servant to the assumptions impressed upon it. That which is held in mind with conviction must externalize itself in experience. There is no uncertainty in this law, no exceptions to its operation. The only delay, the only barrier, is the wavering mind that shifts between desire and doubt, between assuming the wish fulfilled and allowing the senses to dictate what is believed. Those who master the art of assumption know that they must remain faithful to the unseen reality, that they must refuse to entertain any thought of lack, failure, or incompletion. It is not enough to wish, not enough to hope. Wishing and hoping acknowledge lack, and that which is acknowledged persists. The man who hopes for success remains in a state of waiting. The man who assumes success lives from the end, and so success must find him. The difference is subtle but absolute. The one who lives in the end does not concern himself with how or when, for he knows that these are mere details that will unfold naturally. He does not seek signs, does not look for confirmation, for he understands that the moment he occupies the state internally, the external world must shift in response. The senses are the great deceivers. They report only the past, the remnants of previous assumptions, the echoes of old beliefs. To live in the end is to disregard the senses entirely, to trust only the inner conviction of already being what one desires to be. It does not matter if the outer world contradicts the assumption. What matters is the persistence of the inner feeling. The one who truly lives in the end does not allow circumstances to dictate his state. He dictates his state, and circumstances must follow. This is not a passive process, not a matter of merely thinking about the end result. It is a total identification with the state desired. It is walking as though the desire is already a fact, speaking as though it is already true, feeling as though there is nothing more to seek because it is already attained. When this state is maintained unwaveringly, the world has no choice but to conform. Many struggle because they believe they must force reality to change, that they must manipulate circumstances, work harder, do more, strive more. But all effort stems from the belief that the desired state is not yet attained. True creation is effortless because it is not about making something happen. It is about realizing that it already has. The world is but a mirror, and the reflection cannot change until the assumption does. The moment a man ceases to wait, ceases to chase, and instead fully assumes the feeling of already being, having, and experiencing that which he desires, the transformation begins. Doubt is the only enemy, and it is self-created. It is the mind's habit of returning to the old state, the temptation to look for proof before believing. But proof follows assumption, never precedes it. The one who waits for proof will never find it, for his waiting affirms the absence of what is sought. The one who assumes with finality, who lives in the end with unshakable certainty, will see the proof unfold effortlessly, naturally, inevitably. To live in the end is to abandon all thoughts of lack, all notions of striving, all feelings of separation between oneself and the desire. It is to know that the wish is already fulfilled, that the path has already been set, that all that remains is to dwell in the certainty of its reality. And in doing so, what was once a mere idea must become fact, for it is law. There is no power greater than the feeling of already being what one desires to be. It is not enough to simply think of a desire, to long for it, or to dream about it. Thought alone carries no creative force unless it is accompanied by the deep conviction of already possessing that which is thought. The world moves according to feeling, for feeling is the secret that shapes reality. What is felt as true, what is accepted as real in the depths of consciousness must externalize itself in the world of form. To embody the feeling of the wish fulfilled is to dwell in the certainty that the desire is already accomplished. It is to abandon the old self that longed for change and to take on the new self that knows the change has already occurred. There is no waiting, no hoping, no questioning. There is only the quiet, unshakable confidence that what is assumed internally must find its way into physical reality. The great mistake men make is to believe that the world must first change before they can feel the change within. They believe they must receive evidence before they can accept a new state of being. But this is the great reversal, for the law operates in the opposite manner. It is only when one feels the reality of a thing within that the world is compelled to bring it forth. There is no deception in feeling. The one who feels poor, regardless of his external wealth, will continue to experience lack. The one who feels rich, regardless of his circumstances, will see the evidence of abundance unfold in ways he could not have foreseen. The feeling is the reality, for feeling impresses the subconscious, and the subconscious brings forth in experience whatever is impressed upon it. If a man feels loved, he will be surrounded by love. If he feels unwanted, he will see rejection at every turn. There is no external force shaping his destiny. There is only the silent, persistent working of his inner state. One does not need to force a change, nor does one need to struggle to bring about a new condition. The moment one fully accepts the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the creative forces of the universe begin to move in ways unseen, aligning circumstances, guiding actions, and molding reality to match the assumption held within. But this process is hindered the moment doubt enters. To entertain thoughts of failure, to question whether the assumption is working, is to undo the very work that has begun. The feeling must be sustained, must be held with unwavering faith, until the outer world has no choice but to conform. It is not enough to declare an assumption once and then return to the old state. A man cannot plant a seed one day and uproot it the next, questioning whether it is growing. The assumption must be nurtured, lived in, and fully embodied until it becomes second nature. When the feeling is natural, when it no longer requires effort but is simply the state in which one dwells, then the manifestation is near. The outer world is always a reflection of the inner state, and when the inner state remains fixed, the reflection must change. Many fail because they believe the process requires struggle, that they must battle against external forces to achieve what they seek. But there is no battle except the one within. The struggle is not with the world, but with the old beliefs that whisper that the new state is not yet real. To embody the feeling of the wish fulfilled is to silence those doubts, to act from the conviction that the change has already taken place. It is to walk as though the world has already rearranged itself to match the new state, even before the senses confirm it. This is not pretending, not make-believe, for there is no greater reality than that which is assumed in consciousness. The external world is merely the delayed reflection of what is held within. The one who masters this understanding does not waver when the world seems unchanged, for he knows that the world must eventually conform to the assumption. He does not seek signs, does not look for proof, for he understands that proof follows assumption, never precedes it. To embody the feeling of the wish fulfilled is to surrender completely to the new state, to live in it so fully that there is no room for anything else. It is to dwell in the certainty that what is felt internally is more real than what is seen externally. For what is seen is only the shadow of past assumptions. The world may momentarily reflect the old state, but if one remains faithful to the new feeling, the reflection must change. This is the law, and it works with absolute certainty. The senses may try to deceive, whispering that nothing has changed, that reality remains the same. But the wise do not trust the senses, for they know the senses are merely a record of the past. The wise trust only the feeling, knowing that feeling is the cause and the world the effect. They do not allow appearances to shake them from their assumption. They persist in the state of fulfillment. And because they persist, what was once unseen becomes seen. What was once imagined becomes fact. It is not by effort, not by striving, but by the quiet certainty of already being that which one desires to be. To embody the feeling of the wish fulfilled is to live as though the desire is already a reality, to move through the world with a calm assurance that all things are working together to bring forth what has already been assumed. And when this feeling is held without contradiction, without hesitation, the world must reshape itself accordingly. There is no greater secret to creation than persistence. It is not the casual assumption, not the fleeting wish, but the unwavering conviction that transforms the unseen into the seen. The mind that wavers, that drifts between faith and doubt, between assumption and its contradiction, scatters its power and sees no change. But the mind that holds firm, that clings to its assumption, with unshakable certainty, bends the world to match its inner conviction. Everything in life is a reflection of what has been persistently assumed. The conditions one faces today are not accidents, nor are they imposed by forces outside oneself. They are the direct result of past beliefs, sustained long enough to take shape in the external world. What is impressed upon the mind with repetition must externalize itself in form. The one who understands this does not allow appearances to dictate his faith, for he knows that the external world is always a step behind the inner reality. He remains steadfast, undisturbed by what the senses report, for he knows that persistence in the new assumption is the only requirement. Many begin this process with enthusiasm, declaring their desired state and momentarily dwelling in its fulfillment. But when the world does not instantly rearrange itself to match the new assumption, they abandon it, falling back into their previous state of mind. They look for signs, seeking proof before belief, forgetting that proof follows assumption, never precedes it. To persist is to trust the unseen, to hold to the conviction that what is real in the mind must become real in the world. There can be no room for doubt, no allowance for contradictory thoughts. The one who truly assumes remains loyal to his vision, even when all evidence points to the contrary. The law is simple. That which is persistently assumed must become fact. The only question is whether one will hold firm long enough to see it manifest. Most people change their assumptions too quickly, reacting to the shifting appearances of the world instead of remaining fixed in their new reality. They assume health in one moment and sickness in the next, assume wealth and then entertain thoughts of poverty, assume love but yield to feelings of rejection. This wavering ensures that no single assumption dominates, and so the world reflects this inconsistency. But the one who persists, who refuses to entertain any thought contrary to his wish fulfilled, who remains faithful to the new state regardless of outer appearances, will inevitably see his desire externalized. The outer world is but a reflection of inner convictions. If a man assumes himself to be powerless, the world will show him proof of his weakness. If he assumes himself to be great, the world will confirm his greatness. But these confirmations do not happen instantly. They require sustained belief. The process of creation is much like the planting of a seed. A man does not plant a seed today and demand a tree tomorrow. He does not dig it up each day to check its progress. He trusts that the seed, once planted, will grow in its own time. So it is with the assumptions of the mind. They must be planted deeply, nourished with faith, and protected from the weeds of doubt. Every great achievement, every transformation is the result of one who refused to accept anything less than his assumption fulfilled. It is not talent, luck, or external circumstances that determine success. It is the ability to persist in the assumption of already being the person one desires to be. There will always be moments where the senses suggest otherwise, where the old reality attempts to reassert itself. But the one who truly understands this law does not falter. He knows that what is held in consciousness long enough must harden into fact. And there is no effort in this, no struggle, no need to force the world into submission. Struggle implies doubt, and doubt cancels the assumption. The one who truly persists does so with ease, with the calm knowing that reality must conform to the sustained inner feeling. There is no need to convince anyone, no need to seek validation, for the world is merely a mirror, reflecting back whatever has been persistently assumed. If the assumption is weak, the reflection will be weak. If the assumption is strong, the reflection must become undeniable. To persist is to abandon all thoughts of failure. It is to refuse to entertain any possibility other than the wish fulfilled. It is to live so fully in the new state that the old reality dissolves, replaced by the manifestation of the sustained assumption. This is not wishful thinking, not daydreaming, but a complete inner commitment to a new way of being. The one who truly assumes and persists does not wait for the world to change. He knows that it already has, for he has changed within. No condition is beyond transformation, no circumstance beyond change. The world is fluid, obedient to the convictions impressed upon it. The only requirement is persistence. To assume a new state and remain faithful to it until it hardens into fact is the only work required. And when this persistence is maintained, the world must yield, for it has no choice but to reflect the sustained inner reality. There is no force greater than the sustained conviction of already being what one desires to be. The world, though it appears fixed and unyielding, is nothing but a reflection of inner consciousness. To change one's life, one must first change the assumptions held within. It is not through external effort, struggle, or reliance on circumstances that transformation occurs, but through the unwavering belief in the reality of one's wish fulfilled. Every desire, every goal, every vision is already accomplished the moment it is fully accepted in consciousness. There is no separation between the imagined and the real, only the passage of time before the outer world conforms to the inner assumption. Those who waver, who allow doubt to creep in, who look to their senses for validation before belief, prolong their own manifestations. But those who persist, who remain steadfast in their new state of being, who refuse to entertain anything contrary to their assumption, inevitably see their desires take form. The world does not create, it only reflects. Every man is the architect of his own reality, molding it with the substance of his beliefs. To live in the fulfilled desire is not to hope, to wish, or to wait. It is to assume, to feel, and to persist until the assumption hardens into fact. The law is absolute, and it works for all who use it with understanding. Let there be no room for hesitation, no allowance for contradictions. The power to shape reality lies within, and the only requirement is the willingness to remain faithful to the vision. Walk in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, persist in the assumption, and the world will have no choice but to yield. Reality is the outpicturing of consciousness. Change the inner state, and the outer must follow.